APS professional Jesse Rawling recounts his experience when assigned to investigate allegations of neglect upon a client, Joseph, by his care provider. The initial report to APS was made by Joseph's primary care provider following a concern for Joseph's gradual weight loss, including details from Joseph that his care provider does not cook food for him, even though this is among their responsibilities.
Hey, Andrea, have you got a minute?
Of course. What's up?
I had an interview with that client, Joseph, this morning to follow up on those neglect allegations.
Oh, yeah.
The entire interview, I was really uncomfortable.
What happened?
Well, the client, Joseph, spent the entirety making these rude and these racist comments. I won't repeat much of what he said verbatim, but you can use your imagination. And what a misogynist. He said he wanted a white woman to take care of him because his provider was dirty and her food smells gross. And then he asked if I could forward him any leads. Can you believe that?
Unfortunately, I can. I'm sorry that you were put in that situation. Thank you for bringing this to me. I really appreciate that you feel comfortable enough sharing it with me.
I felt I needed to tell someone.
Well, I'm glad you did. People react and experience racism and other forms of discrimination differently. There is no right way to deal with it. Can you recall how you responded when Joseph made those comments?
Well, it threw me off. I wasn't sure how to respond. I was kind of in shock, you know? But I remember trying to stay as neutral as possible so I could get through the interview as quickly as possible. You know, I just wanted to get out of there, but it's interesting because now I can hardly stop thinking about what I could have or should have told him.
It must have been very difficult for you in that moment and for the remainder of the interview. While acknowledging that we need to remain professional and neutral during our interaction with our clients, the truth is, sometimes it is just tough to do. Just remember, when it comes to issues about your safety, you always come first.
Well, thank you.
So, thinking about all the things that you wish you could have told Joseph, should something like this happen again, would you be able to point out to the client that their comments make you uncomfortable?
I don't know. I guess it would depend on the client.
Right. Every situation is different, and our tolerance for even dealing with these difficult types of conversations can vary on any given day. So, if you ever find yourself in a similar situation and you feel that your safety may be at risk and you don't feel comfortable speaking up, I want you to know that it's okay to pause the interview and to take a break, right? Call me immediately. Or if you feel that it's warranted, it is okay just to end the interview and leave.
It's empowering to know that these options are available to me to use in the field and that you support my using them as needed.
I like that you use the term empowerment. If you're comfortable with the idea, I'd like to describe a technique to further empower yourself in the field and to help mitigate the difficulties of having to deal with and on behalf of clients whom exhibit language and behavior that can only be interpreted as racist or discriminatory. It's an unfortunate truth that these situations will happen again. It's called the R.A.V.E.N approach. The acronym R.A.V.E.N is a 5-step strategy that can be helpful when dealing with racial bias or microaggressions. Does that sound like something that might interest you?
The R.A.V.E.N approach? I don't think I've ever heard of it, so sure. Yeah, definitely I'm interested.
Okay, so the R.A.V.E.N approach, like I said, this acronym is a 5-step strategy that anyone can use. Each letter in the word R.A.V.E.N, R-A-V-E-N, identifies a different communication approach that one can employ. See, the order suggests a sequence to employ these communication tools, ranging from minimal intervention to something that's more direct and to the point. It gives you the flexibility to escalate the approach without the fear of overreacting early on in the encounter.
Okay, well that makes sense. So what do all the letters mean?
The first letter R stands for redirect. As this is the first step in the approach, it's best to describe it as an intervention technique with the goal being to redirect or return the conversation to safer territories or to stop it from moving further into harm's way. For example, one may say, I'd like to pause the conversation here because I'm concerned about the language being used.
So if I said to a client, I'm concerned about the language being used right now is taking us further off topic. Can we take our attention back to the question? That's a redirect.
That's right, it is. The second letter, A, or ask, suggests using probing questions to better help the person understand the potential harm of their statements. So one may follow up their initial pausing the conversation by restating what they said and asking for validation. This can help the person reflect and reconsider what was said. Recall Joseph and his comments about the food his provider prepared for him. An example ask approach might be, it sounded like you were saying that the food your provider makes for you is smelly and not sanitary. What did you mean by that?
Okay, well, that's great. So what's the third step in the approach? Something that starts with V?
You're right. V is for values. At this point in the R.A.V.E.N approach, one could say, what you just said is not consistent with our program's values that emphasize equality and inclusion.
I like that. It's like drawing a line in the sand and letting the other person know they're close to crossing it.
Okay, the next step, E, is to emphasize your own thoughts and feelings and how their words may have hurt a particular person or group.
I think that's probably the toughest step in the approach.
It is tough. It takes a lot of courage to tell someone that their words are hurtful to others. Despite the challenges, this step is an important technique to help the individual see that their words were not only harmful to the community that they're speaking of, but also to the person or persons who hear it.
Yeah, particularly for the person standing right there in front of them.
Take care to choose your words carefully. Remember, we also have the challenges of exercising our self-restraint when delivering these messages with neutrality and professionalism. See, an example may be, I was saddened to hear what you said about your provider. Many people might take this to mean that the food of your provider's culture is inferior to yours.
I get it. I still think it's likely the toughest step in the approach. So what's the last step, N?
Yes, N, or next, or rather a prompt to discuss next steps where suggestions can be made to the person on how they can alter their behavior in the future.
You mean something like, the next time you discuss food from a culture different than yours, it's helpful to choose your words more carefully?
That's exactly what I mean.
I like this R.A.V.E.N approach, and I can definitely see myself using it in the field.
You know, I appreciate you sharing this interaction with me. Your response was an appropriate initial response. See, Joseph's comments were incredibly disrespectful and hurtful. The important thing is that you gave yourself a moment to think it through, maintained your professionalism, and you ensured your safety in that moment. How are you feeling about the interaction now?
I'm definitely less worked up and upset than when I first walked in.
I'm glad to hear that. Are there any other supports or anything else you might need right now?
No, thank you. I think I'm okay. I just really want to close this case and forget about it. And I don't want to ever have to call on Joseph again.
I get that. Speaking of Joseph, as I recall, his doctor was concerned about his weight loss. Were you ever able to address that with him?
Frankly, Joseph's behavior made it impossible to get a clear picture if there were any issues going on with him, other than, you know, the obvious. He's just an older white guy. I'm sure he can fend for himself.
Okay, let's pause right here and discuss that a little further.
Okay, I don't know what else I can do for him.
If I'm hearing you, you're saying that Joseph, being a white male, he's been assigned some privilege to be able to take care of his needs better and fend for himself without the aid of an APS intervention. Is that an accurate interpretation?
I mean, in my experience, it's what I've seen, so yes. But it doesn't sound so good the way you're saying it.
Jesse, I know that you personally and professionally share the county's commitment to promoting equality and inclusion. I see that in your work every day, and I know that your clients greatly benefit from your interventions. So I can't help but wonder if you may be assigning your own unconscious stereotypes to this particular situation.
You mean with Joseph's provider?
No, I mean with Joseph. Could this be more your reaction to Joseph than you might be taking into account? Okay, because what I hear you saying that Joseph, being a white male, is better suited to take care of his own needs, it sounds like a generalization that can easily be interpreted as prejudice.
Wait, are you saying that I'm somehow biased against him? That I'm prejudiced?
No, I'm not saying that at all, and I don't think that. Let's take a look at Joseph's files. Joseph was first referred to APS for being the victim of a scam, and again last year for neglecting his medical issues. That case mentions that his wife and both of his daughters have all since passed away, and he has no other family. If this was any other client, would you feel comfortable closing the case without following up on his health issues?
I don't know what to say. I'm feeling a little embarrassed here. And of course I will. I mean, even for Joseph, I mean, I should. I will keep the case open, at least until I can make sure that he has access to food that he'll actually eat.
Yeah. Do you think the next time you have such a reaction, you'll be able to consider the individual rather than jump to generalizations?
It does help to get past his off-putting behavior to a place where I can more objectively evaluate a situation and determine the best course of action, if any.
Thank you for taking the time to talk this through with me. I know these conversations are uncomfortable. Even the most well-intentioned person has biases, and we all have privileges to varying degrees. The best part about having these uncomfortable conversations is that it brings your unconscious biases to our consciousness, and it serves our efforts to be mindful when they start to show up, so we can take the necessary steps to mitigate them. I have my own biases and am definitely a work in progress.
Thank you for sharing that. Why do I get the sudden feeling you've just used the R.A.V.E.N approach with me?
As you know, what we discuss in our individual supervision is confidential, but I would encourage you to consider sharing it with the rest of the team, if you're comfortable with it.
No, I mean, I've learned a lot today. Seems selfish not to spread it around. And I'm definitely comfortable with introducing the team to Joseph. Figuratively speaking, I'll bring it up at the next unit meeting. Thank you.
If you are experiencing strong or uncomfortable feelings and/or reactions resulting from this segment and would like help discussing or processing those feelings, please contact your supervisor, your employee assistance program, or reach out to the diversity, equity, and inclusion representative in your program if available. You may also wish to take some time to engage in mindfulness exercises or self-care of your choosing. For further support, contact the Racial Equity Support Line at 503-575-3764. This line is available weekdays from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. The Racial Equity Support Line is a service led and staffed by people who have experienced racism and who offer support to those who are feeling the emotional impacts of racist violence and microaggressions. as well as the emotional impacts of immigration struggles and other cross-cultural issues.
But I would encourage you to share it with the team if you're comfortable with that.
I won't repeat everything what he said verbatim, but you can use your imagination.